Welcome to episode 34 of the OSO Spurs podcast, where today we have a special guest from a new page in the Tottenham social media world, Lily White Labs. Hi, Kish. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all good, mate. How are you? All good?
Doing well, thank you. Yeah, doing good. We've got Deej with us, as always. How are you, mate?
Doing good, doing good.
And we have Johnny over in sunny Dublin.
Yeah, sunny Dublin, just back from rainy Manchester for the test match, so that wasn't so good. But looking forward to the chat today.
Well, great to have you back, mate. We might have Stu joining later, but he's having a couple of tech issues. So there's some great topics to discuss. I think, despite a lack of football due to rain and some adverse weather that's been blamed on our chairman once again. But we've got some interesting topics. The Kane links have intensified with Bayern Munich, and I think a lot of our fan base is now resigned to the fact there's a strong chance he will leave this window, and that might be the best option for the club. But who are his potential replacements? Like, who logically could we bring in to cause the least negative impact? And is there a way in which Kane departs and we sign other players that mean the squad actually improves as a total? And maybe, Kish, that'll be a great topic for you today, as given your knowledge and around tactics and Lily White Labs.
For sure.
Great. Should we kick off with that one, actually? I'm really intrigued. Go on.
So I'd say, we all know what Kane brings. He's been doing it year in, year out. And I don't think there's a world where we ever upgrade on that. But, of course, we found ourselves in a place where he's got 1 year left in his contract. We found ourselves in a place where we're in another transitional year, changing manager again. So it seems as if this would be, in my opinion, the right time to part from him if he's not willing to kind of start another project, which he's been a part of many. So I think personally, I've thought from the start that if he wants to go, I think it's the right time. I think tactically, he doesn't necessarily profile as a Postecoglou 9. Not that Postecoglou obviously would adapt to Kane because there's no better striker in the world, but I don't think it's a perfect fit. And I think that's why I'm not that concerned with him departing, whereas where it was under Conte or under Mourinho, Kane was kind of key in a lot of our play, especially Mourinho, I guess, when kind of our whole creative side of us was Kane dropping deep and picking up the ball, where I don't think Ange really wants that from his striker. So yeah, that's what my take would be kind of on it.
And what about the players we've been linked with? Because I've seen two names, and one of them your page wrote a bit of a piece about, but one is Randall Kolo Muani. Is that right? Yeah. And the other one is Jonathan David. So there's two names that have been doing the rounds lately.
Yeah.
I just wanted to know what your thoughts were, and then I'll ask the rest of the guys as well.
Starting with Kolo Muani, he's different from Kane, very different. I'd say he's physically blessed, absolutely lightning quick, tall frame, quite skinny frame, very good dribbler. Kind of carrying it from deep, but also in tight areas, getting a yard away from a defender for his dribbling ability. He's got a kind of unique look about him because he's obviously he's tall and skinny, but he's still very quick and quick feet as well. He's come off a crazy good season at Frankfurt. I can't remember the exact numbers, but he's got at least 15 of each goals and assists, I believe, in all competitions. So, yeah, I think it's always Bundesliga numbers I always want to take with a pinch of salt because it's very different kind of style over there. Very transitional, there's a lot of space. But yeah, I think he profiles really well. He played in a front two, I believe, for most of the season, which is obviously different. But I think he's got the right fundamentals to play as like a number 9 in this new system, which is more a pure 9. Ange wants running in behind, being a box threat, kind of getting on the end of cutbacks, and just constantly testing those centre backs. Whereas Kane, he wants to be much more involved in build up and things like that.
Can't you?
Yeah. So I think you're right. He has kind of exploded this season, which took him even into the France squad, and he played quite a few minutes in the World Cup. He famously missed that sitter in the final, which would have won France the World Cup. But I think his profile is so well rounded that
sounds like an even better fit for us.
Exactly. There you go. His profile is so well rounded that I can't see it as a flash in the pan. He's a great presser. He's super athletic. He's super technical. But he's not just kind of a goal scorer. He's great creator. So he's obviously often got the composure. Like in the final third, it might be a shooting opportunity, but he might cut it back to someone else in a better position. So he's very good in and around the goal. The one concern I'd have is probably he's not super clinical. His ball striking can be a bit inconsistent at times, which obviously is kind of the opposite of Kane. We know Kane, like every time he hits the ball, is clean corners every time. Whereas, so they profile almost as opposites, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing, but it would obviously take an adaptation period for the whole club, the fan base, etc.
Interesting. And Deej, I know you did some research on on Jonathan David as well as Randall, but what are your thoughts on the striker situation?
I think the striker situation, me personally, from the options that I think are available right now, I wouldn't necessarily go out and spend the money from Kane on a replacement striker. I think that we could do better bolstering the wings. Either, I think one of your threads suggested buying a right-sided winger and then moving Kulu in to be more of an 8, which I think is which is what I was pushing for at the start of the window. But we kind of have although to be fair, if we have the outgoings that we do, he definitely is an option that I would not be upset with. Another option that I've seen that I don't know necessarily how effective it would be, but keeping Richarlison and Son as our center forward options. Given that Son kind of can do more of the pressing. He's not like a world-class presser by any means, but he can do more of the pressing. He's more athletic than Kane. But also has a bit of the finishing, and then bringing in someone like a better like dribbler on the left, like Mitoma. But obviously that's not realistic. But someone of his profile is what I think I would go for.
And Stu or Johnny, but does any of this even matter if we start with the same centre backs we had from last season?
I suppose it's like you said though. If I don't think we're having this conversation if Kane stays up, obviously. So it's all fueled on the basis of if he leaves, and if he leaves, then you do have to replace him. I don't agree that I understand what Gigi's saying, and he has a better understanding and insight probably when it comes to tactics and stuff like that. But obviously Richie and Sonny are both. I know Richie had a really poor first season, very much disrupted by injury and not being selected consistently as well. Whereas Sonny was, despite how poor he was. But I think he's done very well in time. In other clubs, and I still think he's got the potential to come good. And the question is like if we lose Kane, I don't know enough about Koulibaly or Jonathan David. Certainly heard the names, and they do look. I think Stu asked a really good question about Koulibaly because he's really has come on the scene in the back of one good season. He's still 24, 25, 24, I think he is. So it's just the risk, I suppose, of spending quite a lot of money potentially on somebody. Like I don't know if it's realistic, but on the transfer market website it says 80 million euros is market value at the moment. Like whereas a year ago it was just over 20 million. So like that's obviously massive increase, and he's never played in the Premier League. It's a risk. The other obvious option I would think that you should be looking at is Ivan Toney, and he's obviously going to be out for until the new year, but as a result of that, you can probably get him in at a much lower price potentially. I don't know, like, are Brentford open to that or not? But it's something I think that if you had the option of exploring that possibility, I think he'd be a great signing. To be honest with you, he is proven in the Premier League. He's got goals in the last 2 seasons, hit 20 goals last season. Obviously, another England international. I think sort of is quite a different player from Kane, but I think he would fit into the Ange system quite well. So, I don't know. Like, obviously, I don't know how we all feel about Harry Kane. I don't like the conversation about it, but I don't want to lose him at the same time. And I feel really sorry for Postecoglou having to continually field all this diatribe. And Stu's been calling it all along the last number of months, and I guess we all knew it was going to happen, this endless monologue, but it's so boring, and it's still only July. It's just so boring, so frustrating. And it is a huge distraction, isn't it, for a new manager when we should...
Oh, massively. You got to imagine, like, this is the level of distraction now. Like, Sonny had his press conference with the club yesterday, and all it was about Harry Kane. It's just always the Kane circus. And you think, what's it going to be like in 3-4 months when other clubs are able to offer this guy a contract? Can you imagine the rumours? Chelsea are offering a contract. PSG have offered a contract. Real Madrid, what's your preference, Harry? Where are you going to be without Harry Kane when we win a game because he scores? It's going to be so disruptive and such distraction from all the good work from other people. I just think sometimes, and again, actually, ironically, I think PSG are better off for similar reasons moving on from Mbappe. I think he's completely absorbed their club to the point where he's almost seen as their owner. It's a bizarre situation. But moving a little bit to the centre-backs, what are people's thoughts there? Because there seems to be a general consensus that Tapsoba should be the number one target. Like, he's the head and shoulders best option on the left-hand side. Then it's Van der Ven. And then there's a couple of kind of backup options floating around, but they're seen as, in inverted commas, the cheap options that won't quite cut the mustard. What are your guys' thoughts on that? Is that fair? Is that just a knee-jerk assumption? Maybe Kish, do you want to go on that one? What do you think?
I don't think it's the cheap option. I think Lenglet is possibly a cheap option. I don't think he's necessarily bad. I think there's a lot better on the market. But I think they've got a new sort of scouting strategy where it's being very data driven, which is in my opinion, the right way to scout nowadays. They're going down the list, kind of same way they did with the keeper. So we had Raya top of the list. If they're not budging on the asking price, then you go down and you take the next one. And I think that's what their strategy will be with the centre backs as well. It's annoying that it hasn't kind of happened before pre-season, because that was everyone's clear first priority, centre backs, at least one, possibly two. So yeah, I think Tapsoba's, he's a great defender. I have a little bit of concern of him next to Romero. I rate Romero super, super highly, but I think he needs someone that complements him. And I don't necessarily think Tapsoba's the perfect fit. But I'd still be very, very happy with him. Especially with Ange playing a super aggressive high line. Tapsoba is more conservative than Romero, but he's not like a sweeper. Like, I think Van der Ven is more kind of passive. And I always think the best thing about our best ever centre-back partnership, which was Alderweireld and Vertonghen, was that they complemented each other so well. Like, Vertonghen would push up, step up, and kind of win the ball early, and Alderweireld would kind of sweep in behind. And that's the kind of pairing I'd want to look at again, basically.
Well, they were just competent ball players as well, weren't they?
Exactly.
So playing at the back, you never felt a mistake was clearly coming of those two.
No,
I kind of feel that, something off the top of it, there was that last kind of cameo in a way for Vertonghen was that Dortmund game where he assisted 2 and scored 1, and we smashed Dortmund at the Tottenham Stadium.
Yeah.
But then it was like that was like his last hurrah. It was bizarre. After that game, he was diabolical. Like, it was like he just put every final bit in him for a final cameo, and then he was just finished.
His
But
legs looked like they just kind of stopped working. Like, I loved Vertonghen, but it was a sad decline.
It was. There's people on Twitter who want it back.
I don't know. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Who do you think? Because the way the media is spinning it is very much like Van de Ven or Tap Sober, kind of like, do we get one? Do we get both? Blah blah blah. That's kind of one of the big narrative over the last few weeks. Like, so Van de Ven's a little bit younger, isn't he? And he's kind of, people talk about his pace, but he's a bit more raw. And like, who do you think would be a better complement to Romero?
So I think Van de Ven profile-wise, Van de Ven profile-wise complements Romero better, in my opinion. But I think Tapsoba's quite a way ahead of him in terms of actual just pure ability. I think Tapsoba on the ball is one of the best defenders in the world. That's from what I've seen. He can be a little bit rash at times, but in terms of in possession, he's class. Van de Ven, I think, is a bit more of a project, but he's not like super raw. He's ready to he's better than all our other options than barring Romero. I think of course we'd love to get both. I don't think it's that necessary I know everyone's been screaming for kind of both options. I don't think necessarily that's the right thing to do, especially as we're not in European football this year. It would be kind of stalling one of their developments, I think, because we're playing more often than not one game a week, and Romero's had his injury issue, so I think we need two centre backs, but I don't think we need two centre backs of that level. But having said that, it is our weakest area, so I guess I wouldn't complain. But the links with Tosin Adarabioyo from Fulham, I think that would be him and one of Van de Ven and Tapsoba, that would be a perfect kind of combination. Someone who's used to the league, very good on the ball, probably happy to kind of play a bit part at first anyway. So I think him and one of those two would be definitely good business.
So it's interesting then. Are you saying that you would rather have Van de Ven than Tapsoba? Have I misread this conversation so far?
I probably. It depends what the club want. It's like, are they how quickly do they want this project to kind of accelerate? Are they looking at this the kind of the way that other clubs have started their projects, where we're happy to finish wherever this season, but it's about putting the building blocks in place? Or are they thinking, or is Ange thinking, no, I can win a cup, get top 4 this season? Then I guess you want the more ready-made player. But I think it's hard to know exactly without kind of seeing exactly what Ange wants out of possession and in possession, and we've only seen one kind of game so far. And I think with a couple more friendlies, it'll be a bit clearer what kind of the demands are.
Yeah. And Deej and Johnny, I think we'll slide into the midfield conversation unless you had anything else you want to add on the defence.
No, I think that mirrors what I think pretty well.
Cool. Actually, just before we go to the midfield, am I the only one who thinks the left back situation's still a bit sketchy, or are you guys confident in what we got there?
Worst comes to worst, throw Ben Davies out there. I don't care. We have bigger problems right now.
Okay, so
I'd say I have a little concern. I think Reguilón's not a good fit at all for this new system. He's too erratic. He doesn't really excel in those inverted areas. So I'd say, but I really rate Udogie, and I think he's got everything that can kind of that's kind of player that we should be building this project around. And it's like, okay, he might be a bit raw this season, but if we give him enough minutes, then that's like one position we have nailed on for years to come. I don't think it's priority, but I think there is some concerns there.
Yeah, I definitely want to get rid of Reguilón.
Yeah, for sure.
He's
he was awful against West Ham.
There's about 5 players I desperately want to see us get rid of, but at least I'd say it seems like there's no one in that squad. Well, there's one person people would say his, but I don't want to get into that one. But most of the players, even with Deadwood, they seem to have a good attitude, and at least it sounds like they're not going to be, causing disruption. They want to be there, and even the one that we're all thinking might have an issue appear. There's nothing to say that person isn't wanting to prove themselves now, because it seems like the most recent over-analysed clips of training and stuff show Ndombele actually looking pretty good, looking fit, looking sharp. He set up Kane for a nice goal in one of the training sessions before he got injured. But let's see. But talking of which, sliding into midfielders, there's a couple of topics here. One of them is Højbjerg. So selling Højbjerg, do we need to replace him with someone else? And the other question I wanted to focus on a little bit is about Sarr, because he's a super exciting prospect, and I have this thing, like the biggest, most successful teams don't worry about nurturing young players. They just get the best players. And if someone needs to sit on the bench, tough shit. It's not the big club's problem. But with Sarr, I don't want to see him wasted. I think he's that good that it'd be such a shame for him to sit on the bench for a season and not play. But what do you guys think about the midfield and replacing Højbjerg? Who would we replace him with? And should we replace him?
Well, if we sell Højbjerg, there's 7 midfielders that I'm counting we still have. So I'm not saying keep them all, but there's the 3 that I think are our best 3 are Basuma, Bentancur, and Maddison when Bentancur comes back. But you've got still, like you said, you've got Sarri, you've got Skip, you've got Lo Celso, and you've got Tanguy. So, and let's face it, okay, Lo Celso and Tanguy weren't around last year, but they're 2 of our most expensive players. I'm sure we all know Ndombele's wages are ridiculous. I can't imagine Lo Celso's are particularly low. I'm sure they're 6 figures a week as well. So, and then getting rid of them, I don't know why you would buy another place. You have to deal with them. You have to just decide what he's going to do. And I guess that's one of the things people have questioned why all these players have gone on the tour. But it does give and even though the friendlies have not worked out the way you would have hoped, he has had time to see them up close, and he knows a hell of a lot more than any of us do and what he wants to do. So I'm really intrigued to see what Postecoglou makes of that situation. And I don't know, Højbjerg, he is an interesting player because he was almost an ever-present, really, wasn't it? Hardly anyone played any more games, if anyone, more certainly outfielders, over the last couple of years. But he did have some really poor games. He was, when you see him live, I know he works hard, but he really frustrated me because he's sort of symptomatic of the horrific Newcastle experience. That whole attitude, I don't know, like that whole kind of people talk about him waving his arms around and stuff like that. Like he's somebody people talk of as being a leader, and I think he should have been. I thought he'd be a captain one day, but I just think he never really fulfilled. Maybe I'm being really harsh, but I don't know. If he went off and we got a decent amount of money, I'd be quite happy, to be honest with you. And I don't know, why do we need to sign somebody else? Like you say, Jim, when we got big issues in other areas? Because we do have the 1 game a week situation. Like, why? If we're going to sell Højbjerg, okay, and we lose Tanguy and Lo Celso, then clearly we're overexposed. But I don't know.
It does feel a bit like Højbjerg, though. He's a bit of a scapegoat in the sense he's not the problem.
Yeah.
Like, he's not the solution and he's not the problem. He's fine. Like, he's got a good work ethic. He's just Højbjerg. He's fine. Like, if we were the Tottenham of Harry Redknapp era, where we were like Europa League got us absolutely buzzing and we were knocking on the door of the top 6 and the top 4. Like, if that was our level of expectation, ironically, we're below that now. We'd be going, yeah, this guy's a hard worker. He's just an all-round midfielder, a bit like Scott Parker was. He does the job. He runs all game until his socks have fallen down, put through his shin pads, But I think now our expectation is we're a top 4 club every year. This guy's just not good enough because he can't pick a lock like Eriksen could or whatever it is.
He's not. Yeah. No,
I would say
there's a couple of times.
Sorry. I was going to say that I think the club failed him a little bit because they really, really overplayed him throughout his time. I think he's been, and that's when he started looking slow kind of slow on the turn, very square, kind of he's just been overplayed. And I think he's one of those players that he's never injured, but he probably does carry knocks and plays through them. And that's kind of, I think the club failed him in a way, or managers as well, whoever. I think he's fine. Again, as you said, I think it's probably the right time to sell because the value's decently high. I think that's one of our main issues is never selling when the value's high. We end up with these players who no one wants because we just seem to. I think Levy's got it in his head that selling some of your good players is a really bad thing. But there's clubs all over the world that succeed at selling at a high price and then reinvesting that into other areas, and we just never seem to do that.
And we used to be amazing at it. It used to be our whole model was like we sold players at their pomp, and then like I even look at Real Madrid do it. Like their Casemiro got sold at all right, he's 30, let's get rid of him. Doesn't matter if he's world class. And you have clubs with really bad transfer policies like Man United, whose transfer policy, let's face it, has been shocking over the last 10 years. Who lap these guys up? Varane, Casemiro. Who else did they sign? Anyway, lots of players. Ericsson, like massive wages in their 30s. It's like, look, we fixed our midfield.
Yeah.
Give it 2 more years, you need to replace them all over again.
Exactly.
You haven't really moved forward. And we're making this. Even I hate to say it of Sonny, he maybe he's a bit different because he was so loyal to the club and he's so marketable and he's such a lovely personality. We didn't spend big money on before, but we could have probably got big money for him about a year ago before we had this really poor season. And that's going to be a really unpopular opinion because we know we are so bad at spending our money, we probably would have spent it on a worse player. Anyway.
But I think that
I know Deej, sorry. I know you like Sonny.
Yeah, that it's good practice to sell when players are at peak value because no one lasts forever. Every player has their peak. And as soon as that kind of it's a quick kind of fall down after that. And the price, especially in the current market, there's no real market for prem level players who kind of no other prem team wants. Every other club around Europe seems to have no money in comparison. So it's like I'm seeing bids for Lo Celso for like 10 to 15 million. I think he's worth way more than that, and I don't think it's even worth selling someone player of his quality for that price.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you all a question here. You're all going to have to answer it and give me a little explanation as to why. Maddison's obviously a staple name in that midfield. Who else are the primary choices that start? And you get one on the bench as well. So you've got 2 starters, 2 backups, and there's 2 to sell, right? Is that right? 2 starters, 2 backups, and 2 to sell. What are you going for?
Is Bentancur healthy?
Oh, that's a good question. Actually, let's say he's not healthy. Oh, okay. He's got... Okay, look, it's just too easy a Bentancur's fit, isn't it? Because it's just Basuma and Bentancur.
Yeah.
And then, who are we keeping as backup to Basuma and Bentancur then? Which 2 players?
I would love... It's a weird question because before like today, I was kind of just like assuming we would keep Skip because he's an academy talent, but then that's kind of just falling into the not selling at peak value. And I honestly don't think that he's necessarily of the level that we want for any of the midfield positions that Ange needs. So like if Norwich comes in with 15-20 million, like or like one of like a lower mid-table prem side comes in, he's got the homegrown English tax.
But I do. I can't believe I'd never have said this 18 months. Oh, you cut that, Deej. You're saying if Norwich came in 15 or 20 million, you would.
If Norwich, if one of the mid-table prem sides comes in with a bid that matches our valuation, I think it might be better to move him on. I just don't see him being better than any of our other midfield talent. Selling him would mean we would probably need to sign a better long-term project 6, but there are better options than him out there, and we're a big enough club that I don't think we should be afraid to spend 10-20 million on top of his whatever value we get for him.
Why do we keep producing these kind of like midfield 6s that get from our academy that get slightly better, but they're not quite good enough every year? We started with Tom Carroll.
Because they played under terrible managers. Except for...
But it went Tom Carroll, Harry Winks, he was a bit better than Carroll. Then we got Skip, who I think is a bit better than Wiggs, and there just seems to be this never-ending, like, so the next ones should be stayed. Johnny, what about you, mate? What are you thinking? Behind Bentancur and Basuma, which two would you keep? Because the others we've got to try sell.
Bentancur or Basuma?
So Bentancur and Basuma, keep them, but who are the two behind you would keep that to fight for that spot on the team?
I think that probably have Basuma as a 6 and have Sarr as an 8 with Madison.
Wait, so who? I'll go on. Sorry.
No, sorry, and I don't know. I agree with you, but I agree with Skip though. I don't know. I wouldn't be in a rush to sell him. I don't know how much money you get for him, and it's good because you're saying about we've not made decent money from sales. Maybe you would get a decent amount now, but I still think he's put in some really good performances. Like he was good. He was really good the other day against West Ham. Like I know it's only preseason friendly, but as a new manager, I just think like we all need to be. Yeah, it's our opinions, and we know a lot about the club and everything. There's so many unknowns, isn't there? Like we don't know what's going to happen with Lo Celso. We don't know what's going to happen with Tanguy. Imagine if you got Tanguy going again.
I know. It's a frustrating thing. There's actually some really good players in there that we know could go somewhere else and be like, oh, why do I want to sign that guy?
That's going to be Lo Celso if we sell him.
Yeah, I agree.
Which is why I want to keep him. But the question is, does he want to stay? I guess.
That's that. I don't think he does. I think that's the easy answer to that. He doesn't appear to be very happy at our club. He's already been rumoured that he doesn't fit in the social group and all that stuff. But Kish, what about Conor Gallagher? DJ asked this question earlier. Links to him, assuming that we sell Højbjerg, but does he fit our system? It seems a bit of we were discussing it as a group, and we thought that's a bit of an odd fit. It doesn't. I think it just might be another Højbjerg kind of type 2 in some ways.
So I think in terms of our whole midfield, it's very difficult because I think there's so much talent in there, but so much kind of, as Johnny said, like unknowns that I want all of them to have a season under Ange and then kind of go from there. Obviously, that's not possible because there's so many of them. But in terms of every single one of them, I think there's some kind of untapped potential there. I'm like one of Ndombele's biggest fans. Like I love watching him play, and I think he's one of the most talented players I've ever seen. I think obviously it's been messy, both for him and Lo Celso. But if he could get Ndombele playing, I think that's one of the best midfielders in the world. If he's applying himself off the ball, and I think it wasn't just like out of possession. It was kind of at times not running to show for the ball, kind of going through the motions a bit. But every time he's on the ball, it's like he makes something happen every single time. So that's a kind of biased and optimistic play I'd have. In terms of Gallagher, I think obviously he helps the homegrown quota. He's a bit of an all, like he can do, as you said, he's a bit of a Højbjerg. He can do everything. He's much more kind of energetic. And he's a great presser, and he's a great at arriving into the box kind of late and getting on the end of cutbacks and stuff like that. He's not my favourite player, but I'm in a kind of place where I think if Andrews profiled someone, I'm kind of all right with that. And I think if he does what it sounds like he really wants him, and I think as he's said many times, like he's very keen at looking into like personalities before kind of recruiting someone. He needs them to fit kind of not only in the system, but kind of in the social group and stuff. And I think Gallagher's he's a great professional. So I'm not against it, but I'm not like it doesn't fill me with kind of excitement.
It just seems a needless way to spend money when we need a centre back as well to me. But
I think he makes sense if we sell one of Lo Celso or Ndombele. I think that outside of that, especially if we sell Højbjerg, like I said, I think that we have the biggest piece of depth that I think that we're missing in the midfield isn't necessarily either of the 8s. It's more of a long-term 6. Because I don't think Skip can play there, but I don't think that's I think we should be aiming higher than that.
Yeah, agree. And that brings us to one final player I want to discuss before we finish today. We should have spoken about at the start, but I'm keen for a final opinion on Richarlison, because if Kane goes, I know we discussed it before. We feel like we by the way, because some context, right? So we in March were discussing all the managers we were linked to in the Conte left, and Ange was our number one after De Zerbi had his hissy fit on the touchline at Brighton. And Johnny's a big follower of the SPL as well, so he was a big fan of Ange and kind of drove us and convinced us that was the right thing to do. And now we're buzzing for it. But Richarlison seems like that high intensity, like forward that could also tick a few boxes. So do we necessarily need another striker? Could we just make it work with Richarlison and Son as the options up front and sign another winger?
So that's my choice would be that. That's like, I know I was speaking about the kind of striker options at the start, but that's only if the club are looking to sign a direct replacement. In my opinion, I'd use that K money elsewhere. I'd put Richarlison or Son as a 9. I think you even saw the difference against West Ham when he came on. He on the ball in and around the box, his quality was lacking. But I think that's one, a confidence issue. Two, I don't think it's necessarily a big kind of issue. What we are seeing kind of this pre-season, he's rusty. But what we saw, which was good, was him constantly pushing the line back, and we saw the midfielders get so much more time, so much more space. Because Kane in the first half was kind of sitting on top of Maddison, not kind of testing the centre backs, and then it was all just really congested. So I think Richarlison's, he profiles pretty perfectly as an Ange striker. I'm kind of apprehensive because of last season. There wasn't much that I saw that kind of, in terms of his finishing and his kind of all-round play. But I think he's a great presser. He won't stop running. He'll get on the end of crosses. That's what, in terms of the money we'd get from Kane, I'd look to, as G said at the start, look to get an elite kind of 1v1 winger, which I think we're lacking a little bit. I think Solomon is a good backup for that, but I'd invest that there, and then I'd probably go and sign a younger number 6 to, just in case. Basuma, I love Basuma. I think just the only concerns around Basuma is kind of sometimes the safety of his passing. He likes to play like short, quick passes, but I'd like someone probably a little bit more progressive. But yeah, I'm kind of in the camp of using that K money elsewhere.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. I think that's the we worry so much about losing Kane, but there's also something we touched on earlier. We mentioned it before, is like not selling players at the right moment. He's 30, so whether we keep him or not, the downward trend is coming. And I hate it when you get to that point with a player. You remember like Rooney with England, and it was like, no, we'll just continue. We'll just move him further and further back into a more and more like role further from the goal, and he'll just become a midfielder. But he's not quite as good as a proper midfielder, but he's still amazing at being a midfielder for a striker. And it's like the whole team's just adapting to fit this person. And I don't want to get to that stage with Kane. I want to have had him in his pomp, had him in his best. It's our kind of issue. We didn't win a trophy with him, and give someone else a chance. Because even if Richarlison just goes 15 goals in a year in all comps, well, if you've got a good defence behind him that we didn't have last year, that's another 10 goals we've shaved off. That, the net goal ratio ends up pretty equal. And then you've got money left over as well to upgrade another area. So you end up with another 5 or 6 goals. And overall, the team's stronger. I don't think it's the be-all and end-all if we lost him. And Richarlison was actually really good at Everton in his peak as well. He was actually a good player to watch.
Really, the Everton players whenever he joined us.
Yeah, you're right, John. I remember that. That was,
and also like looking at the stats from last season. I mean, he barely played in 90 minutes. There was only about 3 or 4 games in the entire season when he played almost the whole game, and he had a long spell of injury around October, November. Then there was the World Cup, and he came back with an injury, didn't he, from the World Cup as well? So, like, I think people are being. I think probably because it's the 60 million. That's really what is. I was surprised when we did sign him, but when you're signing someone for that amount of money and they've got a lot of Premier League experience, I guess people probably thought he's going to come in and have much more of an impact. But I do think that he's been pretty harshly judged, in my opinion. And I do agree with what Kish has said. I think he's he really makes it an impact, not just for himself on the opposition, but also creates a lot more space and helps his teammates in a really tangible way.
Great.
With his energy and his pace and his just aggression. Like he's a player that I think, if he gets into a run of form, like the fans would really be a real fan's favorite. Seems to really enjoy playing. There's like some players who really come across like they're, they really care. Like, I guess he's off the streets of wherever he's from in Brazil. Like, he's living the dream, isn't he? Like that reaction when he scored those goals against Marseille. Remember, like the tears scoring goals in the Champions League. It meant so much to him. I'd love to see him have a good season ahead, and
sometimes I think sometimes it goes a bit far, gets a bit Zinchenko type, where I just like, okay, mate, I want to see some passion, but
he can't control his emotions. Like he seems to just wear his heart on his sleeve.
Exactly. And what Conte said, one quote I agree with Conte said, and he said, cool heads, fiery hearts. And I feel like Richarlison and Zinchenko, that they got fiery heads and fiery hearts. And if you can't control that emotion and channel it purely into, you end up being the guy who gives a red card away in the 93rd minute in a cup final. That's my only thing with him. But I'd much rather have that side of the spectrum than have someone who's just not wanting to be there. So any final comments, folks, you'd like to add before we wrap up? I just also wanted to make sure people can find Kish on social media and his page Lily White Lab, which is definitely one people should be jumping on. It looks really, really exciting if you're on Twitter. It's a just for contact, they're going to provide objective analysis on players and tactics, so you can go in there, vote on players as an example you might be interested in, and they've got a new number of writers who will be doing some pieces on them related to Spurs, so make sure you check them out. It's a nice page away from all the Nick stuff, Levy stuff. Just want to read about Spurs in a nice safe space. It seems like a great page.
I'll just add
but any final comments?
I was just going to add that it's been a negative year on Spurs kind of media. There's a lot of narrative around players, and we're going to be kind of trying to bring objective opinions away from all that kind of toxic stuff, and just looking for what players really are. And I think a lot of players have looked a lot worse than what they're capable of in the last couple of years, because of the management and the structure of the club. But I think a lot of them will surprise people this year. Some of them won't work out, but I'm sure there'll be a lot of people surprised by a couple of them.
Yeah, agree.
What's your view then, Kish, just in terms of the Postecoglou appointment? How did you feel at the time, and has that changed at all? If you're in any way skeptical,
I've always been excited by the links to him. I think it's just exactly what we need right now, not just tactically, but just the personality. It's like it's night and day away from the negativity of Conte. It's like every time he speaks, I just want to listen. And I really think, regardless of how this season goes, he should be given time. I think we'll definitely see an upturn in just entertainment. Like, it's been so torturous watching some of those games last season, and I think all the fans will appreciate some kind of goals and attacking and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, great. So just one final thing to plug, because we've never asked it before. If you could subscribe to the channel if you're watching on YouTube, because we're only about 30 subscribers away from getting paid for this. And believe it or not, we do this out of the goodness of our hearts, and we don't take a penny. So, and we deliberately decline ads just so you can watch us without interruptions. So giving us a little like so we can fund our beers when we go to the ground would be much appreciated as well. But yeah, please be in the comment section. We'd like to know if you think Spurs will be better without Harry Kane next season if we invest the money properly, or there is no way you can replace those goals across your squad. But up the Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.
Thank you.